The name Mill Pond Cave doesn't sound particularly exciting, but this little-known cave in Jackson County, Tennessee is full of secrets. The first is that it isn't actually a pond, even though it looks like one. It's actually a spring. The cave system, hidden just behind this unassuming little spring, wanders back for over 400 feet. It's also quite narrow and windy, making it both technically challenging and pretty terrifying. But what makes this cave really stand out is the unbelievable saga that took place in here in 2019, involving an absolute nightmare scenario and a rescue worker who had just been involved in a world-famous caving incident in Thailand a year earlier.
Before we dive into the video, I'd like to ask for your support by subscribing to our channel. Currently, only 8% of our viewers are subscribed, but your subscription helps us create more content like this. Simply click the subscribe button, like this video, and hit the bell icon to stay updated on our latest uploads. By doing so, you'll also help YouTube recommend our content to a wider audience. Without further ado, let's jump into the video.
Jackson County, Tennessee is the location of Mill Pond Cave. But Jackson County, Tennessee is not the same county where numerous other caves, some of which we've covered, are located. That county is Jackson County, Alabama, about 150 miles south. Making matters even more confusing is the fact that these two counties are close enough to each other that, in the case of emergencies, the same rescue crews are often called upon. For example, as you'll see in our story today, the Chattanooga-Hamilton County Rescue Service was called to Mill Pond Cave in northern Tennessee. However, Chattanooga is in southern Tennessee, and it's actually closer to Jackson County, Alabama than Jackson County, Tennessee. So when you hear me say in this video that Chattanooga rescue teams were sent out to Jackson County, keep in mind that in this case it is a different Jackson County, one that is more than 2 hours away by car. Jackson County, Alabama, the county we're not covering today, is like Disneyland for cave enthusiasts. But Jackson County, Tennessee is much less known for being a caving destination. The state of Tennessee as a whole does have some pretty interesting caves. Probably the most well-known are Cumberland Caverns, which are a national landmark drawing visitors from all around the world. They even host concerts here in one of the larger chambers. If you heard of someone going to Tennessee to explore caves, you'd probably assume that they were going somewhere like Warren County to visit Cumberland Caverns. Finding out they were going to Jackson County instead might be a little surprising. The truth is, most people who look at Mill Pond Cave don't realize what they're looking at. It doesn't look like much more than a shallow, muddy little body of water. If you happen to notice what looked like a small cave at the back of it, you'd probably assume it didn't lead anywhere beyond a few feet. Mill Pond Cave is sort of like a hidden gem. Back in 2019, it wasn't well known outside of the professional caving community, and it only drew the most experienced and adventurous cave explorers. And that's exactly who was drawn to it in April of 2019. Josh Bratchley is a decorated caver from the UK. Originally hailing from Cornwall, Bratchley has spent many years on various expeditions and adventures all around the world. Bratchley became obsessed with caves and cave exploration during his tenure at Plymouth University, where he studied meteorology. Plymouth University has a caving club. Josh joined the club as a student, and it instilled in him a passion for caves that never really wore off. In the years of wild adventures he has had since his time at Plymouth University, Bratchley has encountered countless high-stress scenarios. These experiences have given Bratchley a unique insight into important topics like teamwork and stress management, and he actually gives talks at conferences and other business events. Bratchley has ventured through jungles, glaciers, and everything in between. But the experience that got him international acclaim was in 2018 in Thailand. As many of you watching will probably be familiar with, Thailand in 2018 was home to one of the most terrifying caving disasters in recent history. After a soccer practice, 12 youth soccer players between the ages of 11 to 16, along with their 25-year-old assistant coach, went inside Tham Luang Nang Non in northern Thailand. The name translates to Great Cave of the Sleeping Lady. It is a massive karstic cave located in the Doi Nang Non mountain range. The cave goes several miles underground. Shortly after this soccer team entered the cave, a downpour of rain caused the cave to flood behind them. This blocked them from getting out. Amazingly, they were able to travel even farther into the cave and find an area where they were all, at least temporarily, safe. but it would take another 9 days before they were found, and another 9 days after that before they were all successfully rescued. The rescue effort was a media sensation and involved not only the Thai government, but an international group of cave diving experts. Josh Bratchley was one of those experts. What is probably the most astonishing part of the entire Thai cave story is that Josh Bratchley and the rest of the diving team were successfully able to save the lives of all 13 people, the assistant coach and every one of the young teenagers who were there with them. After 18 days of isolated terror, Bratchley and others reintroduced them all once again to sunlight, food, and safety, surely saving their lives. Tragically, there were 2 casualties in the rescue mission. Both were part of the rescue team, and both were former Thai Navy SEALs. Saman Kunan died on July 6th during the operation. Many months later, Berut Pakpara also died due to a blood infection he had contracted during the operation. Bratchley survived the rescue mission and went on to receive numerous awards and accolades from both the Thai government and his home country. In fact, Bratchley was actually knighted by the Kingdom of Thailand and was made a member of the Order of the British Empire, more commonly recognized by the initials MBE at the end of his name. It is extremely rare for cave rescues to be successful. For 13 people to be trapped in a cave due to monsoon flooding, and for 13 people to emerge still alive after almost 3 weeks, well, that's practically unheard of. Cave rescue workers know these odds better than anybody, and they know that when something goes wrong deep inside a cave and someone gets stranded, it is sadly very rare that they'll ever make it out alive. Josh Bratchley would have been as aware as anybody of how dangerous caving is and how little chance of survival he would have if something went wrong. That's what makes what happened to him in Jackson County, Tennessee so shocking. In April of 2019, Josh Bratchley and 4 other fellow cave divers traveled to Jackson County, Tennessee. They were there to explore a little-known gem for serious cavers, the cave at Mill Pond. Part of the reason Mill Pond Cave was so unknown was because, for generations, it was located on private property. No one who knew anything about cave exploration had any clue about the site until it was discovered in 2016 by a man named Chuck Sutherland. Sutherland is a naturalist from Tennessee. He says that in November of 2016, a friend of his offered to show him what she may have thought was a pond in her backyard. The reason I say she may have thought it was a pond was because her husband's family had owned the property for generations, and somewhere along the line they had named the spot Mill Pond. Mill, because at one time the water had been used to drive a mill, and pond because, well, presumably they thought it was a pond. Just in case you're wondering, the difference between a spring and a pond is that spring water comes from deep underground. A pond is just a small body of water. For cavers, this distinction is important, but for the family that owned the property in Tennessee, it wasn't so important. At least, not until Chuck Sutherland showed up. Sutherland took one look at the small cave opening at the back of the alleged pond, and he immediately recognized what he described as, quote, a cave entrance within the structure of the meteor impact at Flynn Creek, making this especially interesting, unquote. He's referring there to a huge impact crater that was created 360 million years ago and is also in Jackson County, Tennessee. Sutherland wasted no time. He persuaded his friend and her family to allow a diver to explore the cave. He also submitted Mill Pond to the Tennessee Cave Survey and brought someone from the organization out to the site, a man named Gerald Money. Money seemed to agree that the cave looked interesting and warranted further exploration, but he corrected Sutherland's submission. The Tennessee Cave Survey is, quote, not a pond survey, he said, so the officially registered name became Mill Pond Cave. An odd name, but once you know the backstory, it makes a little more sense. Within a week, a professional diver ventured inside of the cave. He reported that the dimensions of the inside were large, but that the water was particularly silty. That means sediment coating the underwater surfaces that can easily get knocked up and make it very hard to see for long periods of time. He expressed some concerns about venturing too far into the cave, despite making a few attempts. About a year later, another experienced diver named Jason Richards managed to make it much deeper into the cave and plot out much of its structure. Richards swam 434 feet before he finally reached an air pocket, meaning an area where he could emerge partially from the water, and turned around. Everyone was surely surprised and impressed at how deep the cave turned out to be. Just a few years ago, those who knew about the area thought it was a pond. Now, they knew of a cave stretching hundreds of feet under the surface of rural Tennessee. What's more, based on this information, it seems like we still don't know how far back it actually goes. Jason Richards documented 434 feet of it, but it sounds like he turned around before reaching the end. Perhaps this is part of what drew Josh Bratchley and his diving friends to Mill Pond Cave. On the afternoon of Tuesday, April 16, 2019, Bratchley and 4 other divers entered Mill Pond Cave wearing diving gear. Although Bratchley had been involved in very high-level professional operations throughout his caving career, this, by all appearances, was a recreational dive. The group would be relying very heavily on the use of guide ropes, since Mill Pond Cave is particularly narrow, particularly long, and particularly silty and difficult to see in. Bratchley is literally a knighted cave diver. So, what happened after they entered the cave shows that things can go wrong no matter who you are. At some point, deep in the bowels of Mill Pond Cave, far away from the surface, far away from the light of day, Bratchley's guide rope broke. In no time, he found himself separated from his fellow divers. Knowing how serious the situation was, Bratchley acted fast. He knew there was a limited amount of time before his air ran out and he drowned. He swam deeper into the cave until he reached an air pocket, very likely the same air pocket where Jason Richards turned around, and where the current map of Mill Pond Cave ends. This would have put Josh Bratchley 434 feet inside the cave. No food, no drinkable water, no way to contact the outside world, and very soon, no air tank to allow him to swim back the way he came. Bratchley's friends returned to the surface to find that their worst fears had been confirmed. Bratchley was not there, meaning he was still in the cave and missing. They reportedly spent several hours looking for him themselves before finally deciding to call 911. Rescue teams from far and wide came from multiple states. Remember I said that Chattanooga-Hamilton County Rescue Service was called and that they're located roughly 2 hours away from Mill Pond Cave? It took until 1 a.m. for rescue crews to even arrive at the scene. Things were already looking seriously grim before the rescue operation was even fully underway. Ed Sorensen is a diver from Marianna, Florida, who's famous for making numerous rescues, mainly in his home state of Florida. He was the one who swam down into Mill Pond Cave to try and find Josh Bratchley. One rescuer saving another. Sorensen later told reporters that the water was cold and the cave was dark and narrow. He described the cave as having, quote, zero visibility, meaning that breaking or losing the guide rope was like a death sentence. He said, quote, you could be inches or 100 yards from the line. It doesn't matter because you can't see. Despite these challenging conditions, Sorensen was able to find the broken line and determine the spot where Bratchley had gotten separated from his fellow divers. Sorensen was very meticulous and methodical in his approach. He says he searched, quote, every nook and cranny for a body. If Sorensen, a highly experienced rescue diver, was expecting to find Bratchley's dead body, it would be understandable based on the probability. Of course, Sorensen would have been doing everything he possibly could to try and save Bratchley's life, but in more than 20 years of rescue diving, Sorensen had only been able to save 5 people, and Sorensen is one of the best rescue divers in the world. Bratchley had been missing for well over 24 hours. His guideline had broken, and his friends had not seen or heard from him since being deep inside the cave. The odds against survival here were incalculably high, but on Wednesday night, more than a full day after Bratchley disappeared, something extremely rare and wonderful happened. Something that distinguishes this story even further from so many other stories you hear about caving. As Ed Sorensen made his way deeper into Mill Pond Cave, he eventually made it to the air pocket. The same air pocket that Jason Richards made it to when plotting the cave, and the same air pocket Josh Bratchley swam to after losing his line in the water. To Sorensen's absolute shock, he found Josh Bratchley covered in mud and still alive. Not only that, but Bratchley appeared somehow to be in good spirits. He thanked Sorensen profusely for coming to his rescue. He explained that he had made several attempts to rescue himself, but had concerns about his depleting oxygen supply. Bratchley had thus made the brave decision to stay inside the cave, floating around in cold water and pitch-black darkness where there was air to breathe and where he could wait for someone to come and rescue him. Bratchley had had no contact with his friends or anybody else since getting separated. nor had he even seen daylight. The decision to avoid trying to swim back and thereby avoid the risk of drowning, and to remain in darkness, trusting that sooner or later help would be on the way, is remarkable. Bratchley's faith paid off. Sorensen, euphoric to find Bratchley alive, assisted Bratchley on the long and treacherous journey all the way back out of the cave. The sound of uproarious applause, they re-emerged from that little, unassuming opening at the back of Mill Pond at around 7 p.m. on Wednesday, April 17th. Bratchley had remained alone in the cave for more than 27 hours. When Bratchley was asked by the rescue crew above ground whether he needed anything from them, he reportedly just smiled and said, "Pizza." I think it's safe to say that in deeming Josh Bratchley worthy of knighthood, the Kingdom of Thailand was not mistaken. This caving story is so poetic and so perfectly constructed that it's almost too good for Hollywood. A valiant young man first embarks on the rescue of helpless children in a cave in Thailand, which, against all odds, succeeds. Then, decorated in medals and honor, he himself becomes the unexpected victim of a caving accident. His bravery never falters. He makes a difficult decision, he waits to be rescued, and then against all odds, again, he is successfully rescued. It's a caving disaster story with a rare happy ending. But that's just the thing. Rare. Even though Bratchley was miraculously able to survive, he is the exception. Bratchley is one of the most elite cave divers in the world. He also still had a serious accident with the breaking of his guideline, which could easily have been fatal for him, and would 9 times out of 10 be fatal for any diver. It is therefore both an incredibly moving story and a cautionary tale. Bratchley is a living embodiment of the human spirit. The thing that drives us to explore, to be brave, to dare to dive inside dark and dangerous caves in the first place. But his story is also a testament to how dangerous those caves can be.
Today, we're exploring 2 Australian caving stories. The first shows how even the most careful cavers can still get trapped underground when unexpected trouble strikes in Wombeyan Cave. And the second story shows how Mother Nature can still reach for you even if you escape the cold, dark clutches of West Deep Creek Cave. Australia's amazing caves. Australia is packed with caves to keep local splunkers busy for a lifetime. And the largest, deepest, and most amazing caves draw explorers from all across the world. Some of the most impressive Australian caves include the Exit Cave System, Curralin, and Anaconda. The Exit Cave System is one of the longest caves in Australia, with multiple entrances across its nearly 10-mile stretch. Despite its fame, Exit Cave still has unknown portions. Plus, cavers still haven't made complete or detailed maps of its interior yet, which makes it an alluring choice for many adventurous spirits looking to get a slice of caving glory. Some of the entrances lie by the picturesque d'Entrecasteaux River by Pindar's Peak. Exit Cave's proximity to this water causes most of the cave to remain flooded, with multiple sumps and resurgences along its dark expanses. This vast and mostly unknown cave is challenging for splunkers to explore since it's only accessible by a long hike that involves climbing up and down steep terrain while carrying scuba and survey gear. Exit Cave and many of Australia's southern caves are also extremely dangerous for sporting cavers since many are far away from civilization, deep under, and not fully mapped. If you get lost or injured in one of these caves, chances are no one's going to save you. Even mounting a recovery mission for your body would take extreme effort. Curralin Cave is another one of Australia's most exciting caves. This time, the scenery outside is marred by the nearby Curramulka rock quarry. Mining operations in the area have also disrupted portions of the cave, revealing fissures in the rock that were loaded with fossils, indicating extreme tectonic activity in the distant past. Despite the obvious risk that mining poses to the cave's interior, some of Curralin's biggest enemies aren't cavers or even miners, but instead rabbits. The cave's entrance is a large funnel-shaped hole, or a dolina, on top of a hill protected by a fence.
To maintain stability of the entrance, speleological groups planted grass and other local plants to keep the soil and rock formation intact. But rabbits are digging up the dirt and gnawing on the plant life, which can expose rock and lead to erosion. Cora Lynn Cave also has its own fossil graveyard dubbed Dreamland, which might reference native folklore. Researchers have found new species of kangaroos and koalas in Coralin's expansive underground labyrinth that sprawls across 3 levels across a distance of 8.7 miles. Another amazing Australian cave is called Anaconda, that lies beneath Mount Anne. This cave was formed during the Precambrian era between 3.6 billion years and 539 million years ago. The name Anaconda references native languages of Papua New Guinea, and it roughly translates to Anne's Stone House. This cave is located under the highest mountain in Australia's premier caving region to the south of the country, including the island of Tasmania. Anaconda is one of the deepest caves in Australia, spiraling 1,224 feet into the earth. Like Coralin, Anaconda also has a dolina entrance, but this one is massive. Hydrogeological maps of both the cave and the Lake Timp region above ground indicate that Anaconda could extend another 270 feet deeper than splunkers have previously mapped. That would make it the deepest cave in Tasmania. Now, it's time to meet the cavers of Australia and the groups that keep them safe while exploring the dark mysteries below ground. Australia's Caver Commission and Rescuers. The cavers of Australia are kept safe by the Australian Cave Rescue Commission. The ACRC is a component of the larger Australian Speleological Federation. The ASF is an environmental organization and non-profit that also serves as the representing body for 23 of Australia's caving clubs. The ASF also represents Australia during meetings of the International Union of Speleology. Although the Cave Rescue Commission is separate from emergency first responders, they can still help send rescuers into action. And the ACRC also coordinates rescue operations among its members and even across the globe. In volume 218 of their Caves Australia journal, the Australian Speleological Federation published a detailed rescue guide for cavers who want to start their own clubs, or for those who are considering venturing into more challenging caves. Every caver should learn as much about cave rescue as possible. That way, if cavers find themselves trapped, they'll have some idea about what to do. The ASF helps Australian cavers and rescuers through field exercises like simulated sump extraction operations. Real sump rescue missions are incredibly dangerous. Sumps are portions of caves that are either mostly or totally submerged in water. They can be straightforward U-shapes, or they can be winding passages of rock that extend for miles. Cavers have to navigate these passages with no light other than the lamps they bring with them. And dirt also reduces the visibility of many sumps to 0 feet. If the guiding line breaks, then cavers and rescuers alike are at the mercy of their own memory and luck if they're going to survive. Sometimes, sumps can suddenly appear during floods as rainwater trickles down into caves. And that's why the ASF taught a class at Imperial Cave. Imperial Cave is part of the Genelin Cave Network, which contains show caves that highlight speleothems like brimstone pools, calcite formations, and fossil displays for both families and average non-splunkers. Imperial Cave is also part of a network that stretches under the Blue Mountains. You might think these show caves aren't worth the time of real rescuers or splunkers, but these caves provide excellent places to learn the basics. Show caves have lots of people nearby, including knowledgeable staff. They might have extra rescue equipment, and many of these facilities also have phone service to contact emergency services even if something goes wrong during training. Plus, it's important for rescuers to learn the routes of these common caves, since more people means more chances for accidents, and these visitors might not understand the risks of heading off on their own. A single foolhardy misstep could lead to disaster. Sometimes even these tame caves can claim lives. The Wombeyan Cave Rescue. That's almost what happened to one man who went venturing into Wombeyan Cave. Wombeyan was created 400 million years ago. Native populations used the cave for shelter, and it was central to the Gundungura people, who told legends saying the cave was formed in a contest between the mythical reptile Garangach and a tiger cat, Maragan. Caving groups created a 417-hectare wildlife perimeter called Wombeyan Karst Conservation Reserve to honor the historical significance of this cave and to protect native plants and birds like the flat-faced frogmouth and the brown goshawk. Wombeyan has a show cave that offers campgrounds, hikes, and guided tours. There's also a self-guided shorter tour through Fig Tree Cave, which leads many to believe these caves are perfectly safe. But even though these caves seem like they're just for serene nature walks, they're still massive, volatile expanses of deadly rock and water. Even though it's tame, the guided tour lasts around 2 hours. What would happen if someone got lost? Or worse, how long would it take to find them? And would they be alive or dead? One 46-year-old man from Sydney was about to find out just how unforgiving caves can really be. The 46-year-old wasn't a novice caver, but he wasn't an expert either. He entered into the cave to take photos of gorgeous spelliforms that are open to the public. Then, he ventured a little further to get high-quality pictures of the more rugged parts of the cave that were just off the beaten path. He reached a narrow stretch of the cave and turned sideways to shuffle through. The jagged rocks pushed against his chest and scraped against his overalls. Tight squeezes like these can make even veterans get a blood pressure spike. But he saw the next portion, and he thought he'd make quick work of this challenge. 1 foot at a time, he slowly inched through the passage, being careful not to break his expensive camera. He was near the end of the passage when he heard a sound. Rocks began to bounce between the cave's close walls, rumbling as they nestled into place at the cave floor. He winced and braced for impact. Thankfully, the photographer wasn't in their path. If he was, he'd be a goner. As the rustled dust settled, he saw he was pinned in this tight squeeze deep below ground. When he didn't arrive back at the entrance, the staff at Wombeyan sounded the alarm to the Australian Cave Rescue Commission, who dispatched the Volunteer Rescue Association's Cave Rescue Squad. This branch might be the most elite members in the Australian cave rescue scene. An Australian politician said they were like a paramilitary organization because they executed their missions with shocking precision and speed. The team is split between those who specialize in vertical caves and those who deal with horizontal caves and their various sumps. Because Wombeyan had fabricated walkways and running electricity, the rescue team was able to set up a base camp close to the trapped photographer. However, they realized it was going to be a long wait. The trapped caver's lights started to die out while the team slowly chipped away at the loose rock. They gradually widened the passageway, being careful not to cause a cave-in. After 2 days of digging, the rescue team reached the trapped climber. He was shaken and weak, but alive. The rescuers strapped him to a stretcher and loaded him onto an awaiting ambulance. Sometimes these basic tours can turn deadly, and sometimes casual caving trips can bring entire families to the brink of life and death. Revenge of West Deep Creek Cave. Another brush with death happened over at West Deep Creek Cave, which belongs to the Orangobilly Cave System beneath the snowy mountains south of Sydney. One day in May of 2022, a group of Australian cavers led by Phil Fleming and Jason Moole got together to go exploring. They wanted to brush the dust off of their caving gear after taking a long break from the exhilarating, exhausting, and deadly sport of caving. The 2 friends made it into a journey for their whole families, including their kids. On the day of the expedition, the team of 8 found their way inside West Deep Creek Cave, making descent in daylight without any problems. They each shuffled down large boulders just past the entrance and carried on to explore the depths and wonder of West Deep Creek Cave. As they walked and crawled, they gabbed about how cool it would be if this entrance was unexplored. Another member of the team, Ed Coidel, was an expert surveyor who worked on Lechuguilla Cave in Mexico. Ed spent his time in West Deep Creek taking notes and researching. He also rained on their parade, pointing out marks in the rock that had been scraped off by metal from the gear of cavers before them. Even though they weren't breaking any new ground, the group pressed on until it was time to head back. The return trip is when things got a little dicey for this casual family outing. The children didn't have the strength to overcome some of the short climbs on the way out. With help from Ed, they all made it over, but they were taking longer than they had anticipated. As they approached the surface, rain started to slip across the rocks and stream through the dirt into the cave. Focused on the physical task at hand and hypnotized by the fun of caving, they hadn't even thought to check the time as minutes turned to hours while they trudged back out of West Deep Creek Cave. Miraculously, they reached the exit and surfaced, but their troubles weren't over. The rain soaked into their heavy clothing and the cold air of the mountain started to chill. The team also had to hike back uphill to reach their cars. Thin ice started to form in muddy pools, causing cavers to slip as they pushed through the dense overgrowth of the surrounding forest. There was no path to the cave, so they had to bushwhack by cutting and pushing through the forest in front of them. Temperatures continued to drop as the sun, already blocked by rain clouds, began to set over the horizon. The 8 cavers crossed through natural blackberry bushes, but they were too stressed to stop and eat. At that moment, one of the members took out his compass and told them they were heading the wrong way. Half of the party agreed, while the other half wanted to continue on their current trajectory. Backtracking would mean pushing through more branches and thorns, and they were already drained. Tensions flared as both sides tried to convince the other. Then, the party split up. Shortly after splitting up, the man who suggested going a different route realized in horror that his compass had actually broken during a tight squeeze between gravel and a large boulder inside the cave. Panic started to take hold. Half of the group was lost in the dark wilderness as the threat of hypothermia began to creep ever closer. Using the last minutes of light left in their equipment, the lost team saw something in the shadows. The mouth of a dangerous beast that had killed thousands of would-be adventurers over the years. The entrance to another cave. Using only a map, they made it to East Deep Creek Cave, just up the mountain, and the designated meeting place of the other half of the team. The others were already there, and they all agreed to rest and eat. They rallied what little energy they had left, ignoring blisters and scrapes that stung in the cold wind and rain, and powered through to their cars. They arrived home at 4 a.m., just as rescue crews were being prepped by the New South Wales Cave Rescue Squad. They replied to worried messages from relatives and informed the search party that they made it back in one piece. Just goes to show that it doesn't matter how safe caves look. Sometimes it doesn't even matter if you exit caves safely. The elements can claim your life as well. But if you survive nature's wrath and the terrors of caving, you can confidently say you've made it through hell and back. What do you say? Will you head inside? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed these 2 Australian cave rescue stories, click that like button to let us know, and drop a comment if you've ever been to any of these amazing and deadly caves. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of brave adventurers teetering on the brink of life and death.